Thank you, Chairman Grassley. Director Iancu, great to be with you again. I'm just going to start with the Department of Commerce's Enterprise Services Initiative. Chairman Grassley and I jointly wrote a letter to Commerce Secretary Ross last July, 10 months ago, asking for more information about USPTO's participation in Commerce's shared services initiatives, and we have not yet gotten a response to our questions. We've gotten responses, but not responses to our questions. Users of PTO services will pay PTO fees, and I think they are rightly concerned about those fees potentially being diverted, as well as whether these centralized services will undermine the PTO's statutory independence. So I'd like to submit, Mr. Chairman, for the record, a letter that we just received this week from the AIPLA, from the IPO, and from the INTA that expresses concerns about these shared services costs and urging a complete response from the administration, from the Department of Commerce, to the letter which we sent last July. I'll just quote briefly near the end. These three organizations jointly say the USPTO has already contributed millions to fund the initiative's stand-up costs, and we remain concerned PTO participation will be more burdensome than beneficial for the agency and its users.
Without objection, it'll be included.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I'm asking really indirectly something I wish I could get an answer to from the Secretary, but Director, do you commit to ensuring that PTO fees collected from those who use USPTO services and not taxpayers will be used solely to further the mission of the agency?
Yes, I do, Senator.
And can you commit to working with us to ensure that no actions taken by the Department are affecting your authority, undermining your authority as Director to operate the Patent and Trademark Office independently?
Yes, I will, and I have been working with the Secretary and the leadership at the Department of Commerce on this issue, and I will work with the committee as well as these issues develop.
Thank you. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, the bill I've introduced, the Stronger Patents Act, proposes a number of changes to post-grant proceedings at PTO designed to make them fair to patent owners. A number of these changes could be done by the agency, as you referenced in your opening remarks. Tell me where you are in your review and in considering whether any of the changes proposed in the Stronger Patents Act or raised by those with concerns about post-grant review might be taken by the agency, and where you are in your consideration of whether to pursue these using the Director's authority.
Sure. Thank you for that important question, Senator. So we are actively looking at a host of issues with respect to examination, post-grant, Section 101, and other critically important issues that are at the top of the agenda for the patent system nowadays. With respect to the post-grant proceedings, IPRs and the like, we are actively we're having meetings all the time, and we're having detailed discussions on the various issues I mentioned in my opening statement. So it's the entire proceeding, beginning to end. Under what circumstances should an IPR or a PGR be instituted? The amendment process during the IPR, the claim construction standard, whether it's appropriate to change it or not, the proceeding of the hearing itself, and a host of other issues that relate to this. As you can imagine, we want to do it the right way, and if we want to consider all options and all points of view. We are also meeting with stakeholders, and we do hope to have proposals coming out after the careful consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I could not agree more with your level of concern about widespread and persistent IP theft by a number of competitors, but principally China. I think that was a critical motivating factor behind my work with Senator Hatch on the Protect Trade Secrets Act. I am grateful for your leadership on this and for the partnership with the Director. I think there is so much more for us to do in protecting U.S. intellectual property. I appreciate that President Trump made it a principal point of his engagement with China and his foreign policy, while I may disagree about the exact methods he's used to address it. In every confirmation hearing I've sat through as a member of the Foreign Relations Committee for our ambassadors to China over 8 years, I've raised IP issues. Everyone says they're important, but they always seem to come down the list compared to other national security or regional concerns. Protecting American IP should be one of our core areas of interest, both for our economy and our national security. So I look forward to supporting your work in this, Mr. Chairman. Let me go back, if I could, to Section 101 and the shifting Supreme Court jurisprudence in this area, which Senator Harris was also asking about. The long settled Section 101 jurisprudence has suddenly been really upended. And one of the challenges I think you've faced, or the Patent and Trademark Office has faced, particularly in computer implemented inventions and medical diagnostics, is giving any predictable direction to examiners, many of whom are not attorneys, on how to pursue granting decisions. And frankly, the direction they've gotten is to try and find the closest case and then make a rejection analogy. And as a result, there have been many incoherent rejections, good faith efforts. I think we have a real problem in Supreme Court jurisprudence. I understand your deference to the court and hesitation to criticize their jurisprudence. I'll simply say that I think the legislative branch has an obligation now to act here. We've gotten to a point where it is a thicket that is difficult to understand or to navigate. I'm not asking for a response from you on that. I'm simply asserting that. So let me just say generally, do you share a concern that patentability jurisprudence has become difficult to interpret and apply? What steps do you think PTO can take to improve consistency of examination? What are the limits of what you can do? Why don't we start with those questions and I'll make a conclusion.
I share your concern, Senator. It is one of the most important areas in patent law right now. And look, there are a variety of issues with the Supreme Court jurisprudence. One of them is that some terminology that was introduced in the two-part test from Alice and Mayo is that they're not defined. So just as an example, in Part 2 of the test, announced by the court is whether whatever else is additional in the claims, whether it's conventional and well understood. What is the meaning of conventional exactly that the court intended to impart? There are other issues like that, and these are examples where the Patent and Trademark Office can provide guidance as to what we believe the right answers are. We can also provide guidance, hopefully, that is forward-looking instead of just simply reactive to every new case. Forward-looking as to where we think the law is and should be, as long as we comport with the Supreme Court, with the existing Supreme Court cases.
Thank you, Director. It's my view now that we have clear proposals from the AIPLA, from the IPO, and from the IP section of ABA, although not uniform. I look forward to an effort by members of this committee to tackle this issue. I think you've correctly identified the limits of what the PTO can do in trying to interpret appropriately Supreme Court precedent. I think this is a critical area, a busy area where there's a lot of potential. I greatly appreciate and respect your attitude, a pro-innovation attitude that sees the PTO as relevant, but also respects that the legislative body has a role to play here. Let me briefly ask one more question, if I could, about the PTAB. PTAB, as you know, consists of about 300 administrative patent judges who typically decide cases in panels of 3. It's been criticized for issuing relatively few precedential IPR decisions out of the thousands of rulings issued over the last 5 years. Do you see the lack of precedential decisions as a problem? And are you considering any proposals for improving the process for designating certain decisions as having precedential value?
We are working exactly on the question as to how we can improve the designation of opinions as precedential, how we can create more precedent so that we don't have, at a minimum, to reinvent the wheel with every new case. So yes, we're looking at these standard operating procedures right now.
Thank you, Chairman. And given Senator Harris's most recent question, I'll simply remind the Director, the Chairman, that we are co-hosting an event of the Trademark Caucus next Wednesday that is exactly around enforcement, particularly around sports teams and things. There's a wide range of intellectual property enforcement concerns. Some run to the relatively pedestrian and common, like counterfeited sports logo apparel. others to fake pharmaceuticals, fake aircraft parts, and patent infringements that are fundamental to, I think, our competitiveness. But welcome your enthusiasm around enforcement, something that's, I think, a high priority for the chairman and for this committee. Let me just, if I could, one closing question. I was really encouraged by a line in your recent speech to the U.S. Chamber. You said, quote, "We must create a new narrative that defines the patent system by the brilliance of inventors, the excitement of innovation, and the incredible benefits they bring to society." How could we help you achieve this worthy goal, Director Iancu?
Thank you, Senator. I think that is a critically important issue, that we change the narrative and we drive a pro-innovation, pro-IP narrative. I believe that it is incumbent upon all of us leaders in this space to go out publicly, speak publicly, use our podiums and advocate. Bring out stories of the great achievements of our inventors from the beginning of time, through Thomas Edison, the Wright brothers, through the modern times today. The incredible benefits they have brought to society, to Americans, and to the world. You know, in this summer, probably in June of this year, we will issue patent number 10 million. That is an absolutely remarkable achievement for this country. And look, I don't believe that we are where we are today as a country and as a nation with respect to our technological, scientific, and other advances by coincidence. I believe that the founders provided for intellectual property rights and protections for those rights in the Constitution. I think that has had a direct impact on what we have achieved so far. And it is incumbent upon all of us to go out and inspire, teach, and advocate for further such innovation, because that is what it's going to take for the young generation to grow up and advance the rest of our history.